To you today about meetings. So before we start, I would like to know who regularly has meetings with foreigners like me. Who regularly, for example, once a week. So it's about half the room. Who sometimes has meetings with foreigners like me? Sometimes. A few people sometimes. Who never has meetings with foreigners? Okay, good. But at least you're coming to English lessons, man-to-man English lessons, quite a lot. So can we move to the next slide, please? So before we start, a little bit of an introduction about myself, okay, and why I think I can give a presentation about meetings. So my name is Noel Bradshaw. I'm from Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Have you all heard of Cambridge? It's quite a famous city with a famous university, but I didn't go to Cambridge University. I went to another university called Bristol. Have you heard of Bristol University? I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Dean Morgan. I often don't tell people this when I'm in the lessons, so maybe you didn't know. But so I run all the operations for Dean Morgan, and because of that, I have a lot of meetings every day with people like Matthew and Dean. Everybody knows Dean. A lot of different types of international meetings, some in Japanese, some in English. So I do attend a lot of meetings. I've worked at Accenture. Maybe everybody's heard of Accenture. It's a consulting firm. I started off my career at Accenture, did a lot of American-style meetings at Accenture. I then moved on to the JET program. I came to Japan. Do you know the JET program? It's a government program. They bring foreign teachers like me to Japan to teach in high schools and junior high schools, and I taught in a high school in Hyogo Prefecture for 2 years. And during that time, I went to a lot of Japanese meetings, and I didn't understand. And then finally, Dean Morgan, where I am now. So I've been at Dean Morgan for about 7 years, so quite a long time. I did a calculation yesterday. I have spent approximately 1,000 days in total in meetings during my career. I was shocked. I think maybe only about 500 of those days were actually productive. So I think I probably wasted about 500 days of meeting time. And I'm thinking, what could I have done with all of that time? 500 days. And maybe some of you are the same. Maybe a lot of you spend a lot of time in meetings. So that's a bit of information about me, a bit of background, and let's move on to the next slide. So today's plan, today's contents, okay? I think it's very important, before we start talking about how to be successful in meetings, we need to understand a little bit more about what's the difference between what happens in a Japanese meeting and what happens in an international meeting. Okay, so first of all, we're going to understand that international meetings are different. They're very, very different to the traditional meetings that happen in Japan. Okay. Next, we're going to understand why international meetings are different. Okay, and then we're going to understand how to adapt. So, as Japanese business people, I am not going to tell you that Japanese meetings are wrong. Japanese meetings are very, very good. I've been to a lot of very good, excellent Japanese meetings for Japanese people. But during those meetings, I couldn't understand a lot of what was happening in the meeting, even though I could understand the Japanese. So it's taken me a long time. It's taken me maybe 9 or 10 years to really understand what happens in Japanese meetings. So as a foreigner, I need to try and adapt when I attend a Japanese meeting, but as Japanese people, you need to try and adapt and change when you attend an international meeting. So one thing before we start, an international meeting. So the world is very, very big. There are many, many different countries in the world and many different styles of meeting. And I come from the UK, but a lot of my experience with meetings is UK style meetings and American style meetings. UK and American meetings are very similar. There are some small differences, but American culture has been very strong over the last century. So a lot of the business meetings in the world tend to be very American-like business meetings. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you today how a French meeting works. I'm not going to tell you how a Russian meeting works. Okay, but when I say international meetings, I'm thinking British meetings or American meetings. Okay. Okay. A lot of words here, but international meetings are different to Japanese meetings, and these are some of the different meetings. And I'll tell a story. You can read the slide, but I'll tell us a story. When I first arrived in Japan on the JET program, in the first week, I think it was maybe the third or fourth day that I arrived at my school in Hyogo Prefecture, and there was an English department meeting. Okay, there were 10 people in the meeting. There was the head of the English department, and the deputy head of the English department, and the deputy head of the English department. So there were a lot of people, and I couldn't speak Japanese at the time, so this was a very interesting meeting for me, because I had to just look at people and look at their reactions and look at their gestures, and it was very interesting. During the meeting, one person was sleeping. Nobody said anything apart from the leader of the meeting and the two deputy heads of the department, and it was very quiet and very serious. So I talked to a lot of the people outside of the meeting, and they were very nice people, very friendly, very energetic. In the meeting, nobody said anything. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, it was me speaking in the meetings in English all of the time. And I at the time I thought I was being a good meeting participant, but I think after a while maybe the Japanese people thought I wasn't being a good participant in the meeting because I was always talking. So that was my first experience of being in a meeting. And you can see these are some of the differences between Japan. So in Japan, I'm going to go from the top left across to the right and then next on the left. So in Japan, participants hesitate to give opinions. It's part of Japanese culture. Hesitate doesn't necessarily need to be a negative word, but people are not so forthcoming with their opinions. In international meetings, people are very eager to give their opinions. People don't stop talking. It's true. You should come to our meetings at DMA. Nobody stops talking. In Japan, it's often only the senior people in the meeting that talk. Not always, and lots of meetings are different, but it's often the senior people. In international meetings, everybody talks. And obviously the senior people talk more, but there is even a chance for the most junior person in the meeting to talk. And sometimes the most junior person in the meeting will talk even though they're not supposed to talk. So everybody talks in international meetings. In Japanese meetings, what I noticed in the high school meeting was that often participants talk one at a time. It's very quiet. Somebody talks, there's a pause. The leader of the meeting will often introduce the next person. They talk, it's very quiet, and then the next person comes along. In international meetings, everybody's talking all the time. Everybody's interrupting. Does everyone understand interrupt? So what have I got here? Saegiru. So people are jumping in, and people are almost fighting to make themselves heard. And it can be quite difficult sometimes being in that kind of environment, even for me. If I'm surrounded by a lot of people who are very good at talking, I struggle to give my opinion sometimes and to interrupt other people. So in Japan, participants avoid conflict. Does everyone understand conflict? Fighting, arguing. But in international meetings, conflict is good. A certain amount of discussion and argument and debate is seen as a very, very positive thing. In Japan, details are always well confirmed. So especially planning meetings. The planning meetings I go to always maybe 3 or 4 times the date and the place, and everything's confirmed many times, which is very, very good. But in Western meetings and international meetings, often rough confirmation is enough. So a decision is made, okay, Mr. Smith, okay, you deal with that, that's it, finished. And maybe someone will take a quick note, but often things are left a lot more general, a lot more rough. The last thing, in Japanese meetings, this is one thing I noticed in the teacher meeting, apart from the person who was sleeping, everybody was taking very, very detailed notes. And sometimes in international meetings, people take notes, but often it's usually just one person, and often a lot of people will never take notes in an international meeting. So these are just some observations that I've made, also research that I've done, which shows, you can see that Japanese meetings and international meetings are very, very different. Does everyone agree with this?
Yeah.
Do you think, is that the kind of your experience that you've seen?
Yeah, I think international meeting want to go straight to the point.
Yes. Yeah.
In Japanese meetings, yeah, they don't want to go straight to the point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, Japanese meetings, sometimes they go around.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a culture. It's a culture thing. So in international meetings, it's expected that we deal with the difficult issues first. We don't care so much about people's feelings. We just want to focus on getting things done in the meeting. In Japanese meetings, people are much more concerned about everybody's feelings and what other people are thinking, which is part of the culture. Next slide. So, if you, as a Japanese business person, attend an international meeting, this is what you will feel. So this is what I feel when I attend a Japanese-only meeting. I feel very frustrated because I can't participate. First of all, the language. I can't make myself understood. I can't read the atmosphere. So it's very, very difficult for me. It's the same when you're in a foreign meeting. It's very frustrating. Okay. So hopefully today and over the next couple of sessions that we do, we'll give you some tools and some advice to help you reduce the level of frustration in meetings. The fact that Japanese meetings and foreign meetings are quite different. So let's understand a bit more about why the meetings are different. Okay? And I think that there are two main reasons. First of all, purpose and behavior. Okay? Notice nothing on here is about English. Okay? So English is definitely a factor. But I think even more important, even more of a problem than English, actually, a lot of the time, are these two things. So the reason and the objective and the goals for having a meeting, the purpose, are different. And the way that people behave and the expected ways of behaving are very different. Okay? So we're going to look at each of these in turn. First of all, purpose. Okay, a lot of English. Take your time to read it. Japanese meetings tend to be very relationship-oriented, relationship-focused. People focus on the interactions between each other, and here, getting people together is often more important than the content. I'm not saying the content is not important. Of course the content is important, but getting people together in the same room, sharing time, talking, discussing is actually a lot of the time much more important than the actual business that is going on in the meeting. Who here has been in a meeting that took much longer than the plan? So for example, the meeting was scheduled for 1 hour, but the meeting took 2 hours or 3 hours. Oh, okay, only a few people. my experience of Japanese meetings, and it's not always the case, but my experience of Japanese meetings is that often they'll go on for a very long time. And that's often because there's a lot of discussion, because the relationships are more important than getting things done and completed. Another part of Japanese meetings here is that a lot of the content of the meeting is confirmation about things that have already been discussed and already been agreed. So, I don't know if people, maybe you know the kanji nemoashi. So a lot of consensus building, getting agreement before the main meeting. And one of the reasons for this is that in Japanese culture, it's not good to have arguments or big debates or fights in public. It's not seen as a positive thing. So people try and avoid that by having discussions before the main meeting and then just agreeing on the final points in the meeting. So you can see arguments are held in private rather than publicly in the meeting. And this one's quite interesting. In Japanese meetings, often there's a lot of small talk at the beginning of the meeting. So a lot of the the less difficult topics are discussed at the beginning of the meeting. And that's because people don't want to go directly to the difficult stuff that's going to cause a lot of conflict, a lot of argument, a lot of debate. So there's a lot of small talk at the beginning, and that's another reason I think why Japanese meetings take a long time, is because the really important stuff often is left to the middle of the meeting or the end of the meeting. So by the time you get to the important stuff, it's already 9 o'clock at night, or 10 o'clock, time to go home. So these are some of the reasons why, and some of the characteristics of Japanese meetings. Now let's take a look at foreign meetings and how they're different. So the purpose of international meetings. Who's good at reading English? Matthew. It's quite small.
Let's begin our meeting. Everybody talk, nobody listen.
Can everybody understand? So this is very, very true. A lot of the international meetings I've been in, everybody's talking, and everybody wants to talk. And I'm looking at David. David at the back is often in a lot of meetings with me and Hideki. Our executive meetings are often very, very, very not violent, but there's a lot of discussion, and everybody wants to talk. Everybody's eager to talk, and a lot of Western meetings are very much like this. So this is a joke, of course, it's a cartoon, but in real life it's like this. So international meetings. With Japanese meetings, do you remember Japanese meetings are relationship oriented? People focus on relationships. In international meetings, people focus on tasks. They focus on the content. It's not that we don't care about the relationships, but the relationships are less important than the content. So that means that in international meetings, there's always a clear goal. And there's always a clear agenda about what we want to achieve today. And at the end of the meeting, we absolutely must have some actions, some takeaways. I get really frustrated if I finish the meeting after 1 or 2 hours and there's no action. And Dave is probably used to me getting annoyed and frustrated at having no actions. Decision making. So Western meetings, we don't have nemoashi. Everybody comes to the meeting and we expect there to be lots of discussion and debate and to make a decision in the meeting. And that's why there's a lot of discussion and debate. So we expect to come and persuade people. I expect someone to have a different opinion to me, and I'm going to have to spend a lot of energy and effort persuading that person and changing their mind inside the meeting. So already there's a lot of debate and discussion that's going to happen. Meetings are for solving problems in a very enthusiastic way, but not just discussing the problem, but really by the end of the meeting we have to have a solution to the problem. We need a result. Otherwise it's very frustrating. And then the opposite of Japanese meetings. In the Western meeting, the agenda is always prioritized with the most important topic at the beginning. And that can often cause a lot of conflict, a lot of arguments, because the reason why it's the most important is because usually it causes a lot of different opinions among people. So you can see that international meetings and Japanese meetings have a very different kind of purpose. Does this make sense for everyone? Can you see the different types of purposes? So we talked about purpose, so the purpose is different. Now we're going to talk about behavior and expected behavior and how Japanese people and international people, especially Americans and British people like myself, behave very differently. Who can read this for me? Let's see, can you read in a nice loud voice? Yeah, this.
Oh, okay. Americans are like peas on a plate, but Japanese like rice in a bowl.
Yeah. What do you think this means? Does anyone know what a pea is? English people like eating peas. Nobody knows what a pea is. A pea is a little vegetable. It comes in a pod a little bit like edamame. And it's the inside little round ball. Green peas, maybe you know green peas. Yeah. So what do you think this means? Americans are like peas on a plate. Sure.
I think American styles are some rough, and Japanese ones are very complicated.
Could be. That could be one aspect of this, yeah. I was thinking of something a little bit different, but there are many interpretations of this. Does anyone have a different idea? Mr. Kelver?
Yes. I think peas are easier to eat individually, and rice is easier to eat in a group. And peas will also roll off the plate and onto the floor if you're not careful, whereas rice will stay together.
Yes, very good. Thank you, David. That's exactly it. So the key words here are Americans are more individual. They like to do things independently, and individualism is seen as a very good thing in America and generally in Western culture. To be independent and individual is good. But in Japan and in a lot of Asian cultures, being individual is not good, and being part of a group is much, much, much more important. You have to stick together like rice in a bowl. You can't slip away. So both of those different cultures, as David was saying, they have their positives and negatives. So peas on a plate, sometimes they can roll around a lot and they're very dynamic, but sometimes they can jump off the plate very easily. So rice in a bowl, it's very difficult to move it around, but it's also very difficult for it to fall out of the bowl. So both have positives and negatives, but it's good to understand the differences. So we're looking still at behavior, okay, the expected behavior of Japanese people, Japanese business people and American business people, international business people. So I'm going to stand over this side, sorry, camera. So here we have international behavior and Japanese behavior. So this is what international people expect international people to be like in meetings. So I expect my team, my managers, to be enthusiastic. Does everyone understand enthusiastic? Lots of energy and excitement and motivation and enthusiasm. Proactive. What's proactive? This is an English lesson at the same time. Proactive means doing things without being asked. Okay, doing things by yourself. So nobody tells you, you just stand up and start speaking. It's expected. It's normal in foreign culture. Risk taking. It's like the P on the plate. Oh, I'm going to look over here. Whoops, I fell off the plate. So, taking risks. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. Independent. Okay, we talked about being independent and doing things by yourself. So this is what I expect Americans and even French people, even Russians and people that we're not talking about so much today, I expect them to be more like this. But to Japanese people, enthusiastic sometimes maybe seems aggressive. Sometimes international people, foreigners, are seen as too direct, talking too straight. Sometimes careless, not thinking enough about the detail. And sometimes maybe selfish. So they're independent. They're just taking up all the talking space for themselves. They're selfish. So you have these different perceptions, these different views of what people's behavior is like. Japanese behavior. So expected behavior in a Japanese meeting is thorough. What does thorough mean? David? Complete, yes. Doing things to the end. Putting in a lot of detail. Cautious. What does cautious mean? Cautious.
How should I say? Don't want to take the lead.
Very good.
Step one by one.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, doing things step by step, not taking risks, being careful not to make mistakes. That's very true in meetings. People don't want to be seen to be making mistakes. It's also very true in English classes or English seminars. So if this was a seminar in London or in New York, everybody would be talking and making mistakes and giving stupid answers. But in a Japanese seminar, people tend to be more quiet and more cautious. It's okay. So it's fine, it's fine. And then, caring about others and caring about what other people think. This is part of the relationship aspect. And interdependent, not independent. Interdependent means you depend on other people. Okay? So somebody else will do something for you, and you will do something for somebody else. So there are links between people, like rice in a bowl. Everything's linked together very, very tightly. So all of this is expected, but to international people, especially people who come to Japan for the first time, or they're not accustomed, they're not used to working with Japanese people, this seems slow. The meeting's moving too slowly. When can we finish? When can we get something done? Indecisive. These Japanese people are not making decisions. Why not? It's very, very frustrating. Ambiguous. What does ambiguous mean? Anybody? Mr. Hoggold?
Unclear.
Unclear. Yes. Unclear. Having more than one answer. Having lots of different interpretations. I'm not quite sure what to think. And this is part of the indirectness. So Westerners tend to be very direct. This is a pen. Japanese people might say this is a pen, but there may be some other indirect way of saying it, like this is an instrument for writing. I'm thinking, okay, it could be a pen, it could be a computer. So I have many different possible answers. So this is how Westerners, and this is true, this is not just me, but this is, if you read a lot of newspapers or you read books about culture, the differences in culture, international people view Japanese people, Japanese business people, as being slow, indecisive, ambiguous, and this sounds a little bit negative, but weak. And it's a shame, because I've lived in Japan for a long time, and I know Japanese people are some of the strongest people in the world, especially inside and in terms of strength and courage and ability to stand up for things like when there are earthquakes. But in a meeting, because of all these things, because of being cautious and thorough, to Westerners, it sometimes seems that Japanese people are weak. And that's a shame. That is a shame. So these are the different types of behaviors that you get in Japanese meetings and Western meetings. Let's move on to the next slide. So, actually, can you move back? So, the last slide, I'm going to tell you in a minute about how to change all this, how to adapt to international meetings. First of all, why should you adapt? Why shouldn't the foreigners adapt when they come to Japan? And my answer to that is they can adapt, but you'll be waiting a very, 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 very long time. And it might never happen. One problem is Japanese culture and the way that Japanese people behave in meetings is very unique to Japan. Whereas the way that American business culture in particular around the world has become so widespread that even in different countries like Egypt, parts of Africa, Russia, even in those countries, it's generally accepted that American business culture, you have a lot of consulting companies that started off in America, banks that started off in America. The culture's become so widespread that English-speaking, American-speaking culture has become the kind of the common currency. So you can wait for foreigners to change, and some foreigners like me who have been here for 9 years or 10 years, slowly we're changing, but it takes a long time. So if you really want to succeed and you want your companies to succeed, then you have to be the ones that make the change. It's going to be much quicker. You can change in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. If you wait for your foreign counterparts to change, it could take 10 years, and it's too slow. Okay? So how can you change? Okay, I'm going to give you some tips. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay, good. So how do we succeed in international meetings? First of all, we talked about purpose. We have to know the purpose of the meeting. And there may be lots of different purposes of meetings. Who can tell me what's one reason or one goal of having a meeting? Who can tell me one reason why you might have a meeting? David? To make a decision, okay, that's one purpose. Any other purposes?
Share the information to you.
Very good, yeah, so to hear everyone's information. But actually, a lot of Western people would be very dissatisfied, very unsatisfied with that kind of meeting because there's no action at the end of it. So it is possible to have that kind of meeting. What else? What other purposes do we have for meetings?
To decide the next action.
Yes, yeah, especially, for example, in a project or something, the next step, the planning process to decide the next step. Yeah, so it's very important to know the purpose of the meeting because your international colleagues they'll be very clear about the purpose. And if they don't meet the purpose, if they don't achieve the purpose, they'll be very frustrated. Okay, so second one, be ready to give your opinion. It's very important. It's expected that at meetings, everybody has an opinion. And the best way to give your opinion is to go into the meeting with your opinions ready and prepared. So think in advance about what you're going to say, when you're going to say it, how you're going to say it. Okay, that will help you a lot. I'm not going to talk in too much detail about these today because we're going to do some training afterwards, some activities, and also the next seminar that we run in 1 month's time, and then the month after that will be about these topics. Okay, so how to be ready to give your opinion. Be prepared to make quick decisions. Okay, international people, they like to decide things quickly, even if we don't have all the information. Okay, I may only have 50% of the information, but I'm going to take a risk and make a decision. I have to use my judgment and just decide. So if you're not ready to make decisions, then everybody else in the meeting will be making decisions and you'll get left behind. Okay, so you have to be ready to make decisions quickly. Be ready for interruptions and conflict. Okay, so even if you're ready to give your opinion, you prepared for hours to give your opinion, and you start speaking, somebody else might jump in and start speaking, and you're But you have to be ready for that. It's going to happen. Okay, Westerners, foreigners won't wait. So be ready for interruptions and conflict. And be forgiving. Does everyone understand this word, forgiving? So everybody in your meeting, they're not trying to be aggressive. It's just the way that their culture works. They're not trying to be selfish. Usually, some people are selfish. But most people are not trying to be selfish. So be forgiving, okay? If you get frustrated and annoyed and angry with people, then it'll just make your life miserable. So don't be too worried if everybody else is talking and you don't get the chance to talk too much. It's okay. Keep studying, keep learning how to do all of these things, and eventually you'll get better and better. But don't get frustrated. And the last one, we're in English school, so I had to drop this in somewhere. Brush up on your English skills for meetings. Okay, so there's a few different parts of English. There's things like grammar and vocabulary. Okay, of course it's important to have grammar and vocabulary. So keep studying English little bit by little bit. Keep getting better with your basic English skills. Pronunciation is very important. The way people look at you in a meeting. So it's the same for me. If I go to a Japanese meeting and I start talking Japanese with a very English accent, then it's not the same as if I go to a Japanese meeting and speak with a very nice Tokyo Hyojingo accent, which I can't do, to be honest. But I listen to other foreigners who can speak with a very clear Japanese accent, and it changes people's impression of you. So if you can improve your pronunciation, if you can get rid of your katakana pronunciation, it doesn't have to be perfect. You need to be able to speak clearly so that people can hear you, they can at least hear the words, and then try and get rid of some of that katakana sounding Japanese. And it can make a big difference about the way people look at you. And if people look at you in a positive way, then they respect you. And when people respect you in a meeting, they give you time to speak. They're more gentle with you. If people don't respect you in the meeting, that's when they'll talk. They'll just keep talking and they won't listen to you. Okay? So English skills, those basic English skills like grammar, vocabulary and pronunciation are very important. But also, these kind of skills, giving your opinion. It's much easier to give your opinion if you know the expression about how to give your opinion. So for example, giving your opinion, Matthew, what's a good expression?
In my opinion.
Okay. In my opinion, you are wrong. Okay. But it's a very set expression. It's a very set expression. If you learn 3 or 4 expressions for how to give your opinion, it'll make your life so much easier and it'll give you much more confidence in the meeting. Decisions. So learn how to make decisions, how to confirm decisions. It'll make you much more confident with making decisions. Interruptions. This is a big one that we're going to practice today. Okay? When other people interrupt, you have to know how to say, hold on a minute. Please wait. I'm giving my opinion. Okay? If you don't have that expression, then it's very difficult to stop people interrupting. Also, you need to know how to interrupt, how to jump in. Like, excuse me, I have a point to make. Or, please wait, you've been talking for far too long. I want to speak. So if you have some expressions like that, then it will help you be more effective and to have more confidence in the meetings. So, Yes, we can move on. That's all I want to share with you today. Hopefully I gave you an overview, a summary of meetings are different in an international environment compared with a Japanese environment. They are different, they're completely different, and you have to understand that first of all. We understood why they're different, okay, so we looked at purpose. The reasons why we have meetings are very different in Japan and in the rest of the world. And then behavior. So the way that people are expected to behave in the meetings are very, very different. Okay. And then I gave you a whole series of tips as to how you can improve your meeting skills. And we're going to be working on some of those today and next time. Okay, so that's all from me. Does anyone have any questions? You'll get time to ask questions later if you don't have questions now.
One question. Which should I use why, I, or we in the meeting? Yeah.
Do you mean if you're giving your opinion or something?
Yeah, that's it.
I would say in general, if you're, for example, if it's a sales meeting or a meeting outside of the company, then you're speaking for your company. So you probably use we more than I. But if it's your own opinion, if it's really your own independent opinion, then I is okay. But it really, really depends on the situation. Yeah. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah.
I'll think about it some more and try and give you an answer later.
I think this is some kind of the difference between Japanese and international.
Yes.
Japanese don't want to use I just because they don't want to take a risk.
Yes.
Yeah. So we would like to use we.
Yeah. It's probably true. I think in international meetings, you'll hear the word I much more because people they're confident giving their own opinion. They don't mind taking a risk. Yeah. It's a good question. Very good question.
I would just say with that, one of the key differences with the I and the we is a lot of times the Japanese meeting, the decision is often not made in that meeting. It's not a decision that's made there, it's made outside the meeting. So when they come back to a meeting to give the decision, they're giving a decision that's been made by a bigger group, which is a we.
Yeah.
Whereas often with the international meetings, we're just, some guy is just popping ideas out of his head saying, I have an idea. And it's definitely not.
Yeah. That's a really good point, David. Okay, we better stop there because we need to move on to the next part. But thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Noel.